On Thursday, ALBA-TCP country members strongly rejected OAS Secretary General Luis Almagros' interference in Bolivia's internal affairs. Spain's Congress passed on Thursday a bill that regulates and decriminalizes euthanasia. And Russian President Vladimir Putin responded to U.S. President Joe Biden's remarks, saying they reflect the United States' own troubled past and current problems. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is From the South. On Thursday, countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Treaty, or ALBA-TCP, forcefully rejected the interference in the internal affairs of Bolivia by the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro. In a statement published on its Twitter account, the ALBA-TCP countries warned the international community about these actions, which are a serious violation of the principles and purposes of the UN. They also denounced that such actions only promote scenarios of confrontation and destabilization in the democratic processes of the Bolivian people. The ALBA-TCP members ratified their support and solidarity with the Bolivian people and the government of President Luis Arce Catacora. And in view of these unfounded claims made by the Secretary General of the OAS regarding judicial independence in Bolivia, the Puebla Group also issued a statement. The Progressive Group noted it viewed the statements of the OAS Secretary General regarding an alleged abuse of judicial mechanisms in Bolivia with great concern, stressing they flagrantly disregard the independence of the different branches of the country. The group stressed that it does not only recognize the moral authority of the Secretary General. It also reiterated that as long as the organization lacks an impartial Secretary General, it will continue to serve as a mechanism to generate conflicts in the region. Cuban President Miguel DiazCanel sent his condolences to the people of and the government of Tanzania of the recent death of the president of the African nation, John Pombe Magufuli. Via its Twitter account, the head of state offered his condolences to the family and the friends of the president on behalf of the Cuban people. The politician and professor John Pombe Joseph Magufuli died at the age of 61 on a hospital in Dar es Salaam due to heart problems he has battled for over 10 years. The country's vice president gave the news in a televised address on Wednesday and announced 14 days of national mourning. John Pombe Magufuli has been president of Tanzania since November of 2015. Bolivia's Foreign Affairs Ministry rejected the recent statements of Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro regarding the detention of former de facto President Janina Anyas. During a work meeting of the Forum for the Progress of South America on Tuesday, Bolsonaro criticized Anyas' detention and said he considers unreasonable that she could be accused of having perpetrated a coup d'etat, and urged that the rule of law be respected in the national territory. Bolivia's Foreign Ministry issued an official statement considering these declarations as an interference in domestic affairs and referring to the rule of law. The official said that according to the Charter of the UN that establishes the obligation to not intervene in matters within the domestic jurisdiction of states, and assured that the Bolivian government is working towards reciprocal respect for the sovereignty of the peoples. And in Bolivia, the authorities of the prison where the former de facto president of Bolivia, Janina Anyas, is serving 4 months in preventive detention, rejected on Wednesday a request to transfer her to a private clinic following a high blood pressure episode. The director of the penitentiary regime, Juan Carlos Limpias, told local media that the decompensation did not allow her release from the prison and that the medical staff has already assisted the politician. Anyas has been held in the Women's Guidance Center of Obrajes in La Paz under accusations of terrorism, sedition, conspiracy, economic damage to the state, and her role in the coup d'etat against former President Evo Morales in 2019. We're taking our first break now. Join us again after this. And also don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at TeleSUR for more news. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. On Thursday, Spain's Congress passed a bill that regulates and decriminalizes euthanasia. Despite the rejection of the popular Vox party, the bill was approved by 202 votes in favor, 141 against, and 2 abstentions, and will come into effect in June. The law establishes that physician aid in dying may be requested by persons of legal age who suffer from a serious, chronic, incurable, and incapacitating illness, which affects their autonomy and generates constant and intolerable physical or psychological suffering. Spain becomes the 6th nation in the world that grants the right to a dignified death, alongside the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Canada, and Colombia. Following the approval of the bill, several euthanasia advocates commented on this groundbreaking bill approved by the Spanish Congress.
Because it is going to be a euthanasia law, I suspect it will be very watered down. Because from what I have learned, it seems that they will only authorize euthanasia when the pain is unbearable. I ask myself, who is going to measure whether my pain is unbearable or not? The priest, the pope, the politicians? I think that I will have to decide.
Obviously, you have to control it in a legal way. Let's say to do it because it's the right, and it's also something that we have to consider in society, because basically this happens because medicine has reached limits in how it can maintain life in a way. Biological life, in a way. Lengthen in a lot. Before people got sick, died, and that's it. Now they get sick and life can be prolonged for a long, long time.
Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's Conservative Party powered to a 4th consecutive election victory in a vote held during a nationwide lockdown and dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic, near complete results indicated on Thursday. The results put Rutte in pole position to begin talks to form the country's next ruling coalition, most likely with another big winner, the centrist pro-European D66 party, led by former diplomat Sigrid Kaag. Moves to form a new coalition were to start on Thursday afternoon local time, with the leader of the lower house of parliament meeting party leaders. Rutte's party was forecast to win 35 seats, 2 more than the last election, while D66 gained 5 seats to make its bloc to 24 according to projections. The political left also looks likely to be out of power after parties lost seats or failed to gain ground after 4 years in opposition to Rutte's outgoing centre-right coalition. The Green Left Party, which was a big winner in the 2017 election, was forecast to lose half of its 14 seats.
I think it is good that also for small parties this election went well and they got a lot of votes. The big parties will have to listen to them.
Well, I'm quite disappointed because I hoped the VVD would definitely lose some points. I personally voted for one of the smaller parties that didn't get any points at all, so that's even more disappointing. Generally, yeah, I don't really understand how nothing's changed since the last elections, even though so many things have happened, and that has been quite disappointing.
Brazil continues to experience high records of deaths due to COVID-19. On the last 24 hours, the health authorities registered a new grim record of more than 3,000 deaths and almost 100,000 confirmed cases. The National Council of the Health Secretariat said that with the over 3,000 new fatalities in the last 24 hours, the South American country already counts 284,775 diseases due to the pandemic. The health agency also noted that at the end of Wednesday, 500 deaths due to COVID-19 in the state of Rio Grande do Sul were not seen in time for the final tally. The health authority also reported that the country has around 80% occupancy in the care units for COVID-19 patients. And in the Czech Republic, health authorities registered record numbers of coronavirus patients filling up intensive care units. Hospitals across the country are at full capacity with COVID-19 patients, and health officials have been warning that the system is at near collapse in some regions. To date, the Czech Republic registers more than 1.4 million COVID-19 cases and over 24,000 deaths. On Wednesday, health workers in the Spanish capital, Madrid, tried to reassure people that COVID-19 vaccinations are safe after the Spanish government suspended the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine to investigate possible side effects.
Investigate what is the cause of the reported blood clots. But the truth is that we have administered over 100,000 vaccines of this type, and only a few cases were detected, and we still need to study whether it has a direct relation to the vaccine. How to rebuild the trust of many citizens who at the moment can't even sleep because they have the first dose and are waiting to see if they will have any type of side effect, and others who will have to take the second dose of the vaccine in the future. Let's see if they do it. That's what worries me the most right now. How we can build trust regarding this vaccine. How are we going to do it? With a lot of pedagogy, with a lot of education, with a lot of information.
We're taking one last short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that U.S. President Joe Biden's remarks about him being a killer reflect the United States' own troubled past and current problems.
I remember when we were young and would bicker out in the yard, we would say, I am a robber and you're glue. Bad names bounce off me and stick to you. This is not just a silly childish proverb. The meaning is psychological, quite deep. We always see our own qualities in other people and assume that they are just like us. The US think that we are the same as them, but we are different people. We have a different genetic code and cultural and moral values, but we know how to defend our interests. We work with them, but in those areas in which we are interested ourselves, and on terms that are beneficial for us, they will be forced to contend with this. They will be forced to contend with this despite all their efforts to stop our development, despite their sanctions and insults. They will be forced to contend with this on our part in accordance with our national interests. We will develop relations with all countries of the world, including the United States.
China's top diplomats arrived in Anchorage, Alaska early morning of Thursday local time to attend the high-level strategic dialogue with their U.S. counterparts for the first time since Joe Biden took office. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Yang Yechi, member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee, the Chinese State Council, and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, as well as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, will attend the meeting on Thursday and Friday. Chinese ambassador to the U.S., Kui Tianqi, stressed that the most basic premise for any countries to hold a dialogue and communication should be equality and mutual understanding, adding that he hopes this dialogue can be a good beginning to start a process of honest, constructive, and rational dialogue and communication. North Korea's first Vice Foreign Minister Choi Song-hui confirmed the U.S. recently tried to initiate contacts with Pyongyang, but dismissed the effort as a cheap trick, adding that Pyongyang will never respond until Washington abandons hostile policies towards the Asian country. In a statement released by North Korea's local media, the top diplomat said the U.S. sent emails and phone messages through various channels, including through a third country. On Thursday, a bombing killed 4 state employees commuting in a minibus in the Afghan capital of Kabul. Federwas Faramar, spokesman for the Kabul police chief, said a woman was among the dead and 9 other people were wounded in the attack in the city's north. No one immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, but government employees have been targeted before. Security officials said another bombing on Monday against a minibus carrying state workers in Kabul killed 3 women and a 3-year-old child and wounded 13 others. Afghanistan is experiencing a nationwide spike in bombings, targeted killings, and other violence as peace negotiations in Qatar between the Taliban and the Afghan government stalled.
An explosion happened. When I came out, I saw smoke was rising from the minibus. Another vehicle and a taxi were damaged over there. Everyone was yelling for help. The wounded victims were shouting at us to take them out of the minibus. I evacuated 3 victims from the minibus, and the driver was alive.
Israel is among the main promoters of the terrorist war imposed on Syria. Damascus denounces this and assures that for the last 10 years, Tel Aviv has not ceased to offer support to extremist groups operating on Syrian soil. Our correspondent Hisham Wanous has a story.
In the last 2 years, Israel committed more than 200 airstrikes against Syria. The last one, which is the 7th of its kind so far this year, took place on Tuesday night, March 16th, with missiles launched from the occupied Syrian Golan against the southern perimeter of Damascus, and, like the previous attacks, it was countered by the air defense of the Syrian Arab Army. These are failed attempts to save the defeated terrorist gangs, which will be answered in due course, says the government and citizens of the Arab country.
Syria is ready to respond to any aggression, and the Syrian Arab Army is prepared to face Israeli aggression against Syrian territory as part of the war against terrorism and its sponsors, especially the Zionist entity, the main sponsor of terrorism in Syria.
Damascus denounces that the Israeli entity, since the beginning of the terrorist war in 2011, has supplied huge amounts of money, weapons, and ammunition to extremist groups that promote violent confrontation in Syria. This was confirmed when the Syrian army discovered several warehouses of Israeli-made weapons and food in the liberated areas in southern Syria, near the occupied Syrian Golan.
The Israeli aggressions take place in the context of continuous logistic support of Israeli entity to the terrorist groups operating in Syria to destabilize the whole region. There are intelligence reports that said that Israeli entity reactivated terrorist cells that attack positions of the Syrian Arab Army in the southern region of Syria.
The Israeli entity employs all means to prevent the total defeat of the terrorists operating on Syrian soil. Besides the continuous bombing and the supply of weapons and ammunition, the Israeli occupation troops transfer wounded extremists to occupied Palestine for treatment and then return them to the battlefields in Syria. Hostile practices that Damascus claims will not prevent the inevitable victory of the Syrian Arab Army against terrorism and its sponsors.
Protesters in Myanmar took to the streets of Dawei on Thursday, venturing to demonstrate in the morning despite the fear of lethal action by security forces. Around 100 students, teachers, and engineers marched through an area in the small southern city, which was become a hotspot for the opposition to the February 1st military takeover. In earlier weeks, tens of thousands joined such demonstrations, but numbers have fallen since police and soldiers began firing live ammunition into crowds. At least 5 people have been killed by security forces in Dawei. As of Tuesday, 200 people had been killed and nearly 2,200 arrested or charged. Mount Etna in Italy lit up the sky with lava explosions and smoke plumes several kilometers high, the 11th such movement in 3 weeks. On Tuesday night, Etna again experienced a strong eruption in the southeastern crater that fed a lava flow that headed for the Bouve Valley. The phenomenon was accompanied by a loud noise that was heard from a great distance and by the emission of an eruptive cloud column that caused rocks and ash to fall across the northeast side of the volcano. Lava eruptions have reached 600 to 700 meters in altitude. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts as well. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.